Advance the colors.
Oh, say, can you see by the dawn's early light what so proud at the twilight's last gleaming, whose broad stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the bands bursting in air gave proof through the night that a flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave.
Retire the colors.
Go, sir! Orders!
I invite you to bow your heads with me. Creator, as we gather together over the next 2 days, some of us are returning, yet many new faces. Guide our conversations and bring a renewed sense of joy found within one another. Thank you for opportunities to hear from speakers from the Department of Defense, State Department, South Korean Ambassador, members of the DPAA, and many others. While there are daunting realities surrounding each story, from the Korean and Cold Wars, details unknown, hearts longing for some semblance of an answer, thank you again for each person here, the families, friends, loved ones come together, hurt together, bond together, and remember together. Humans don't hope for pain. We hope for peace and comfort. Pain is present for all of us, unavoidable, and undulating in intensity throughout our lives. But the sacred part of our journey is sharing it with those around us. For the next 2 days, provide opportunities for storytelling, laughter, tears, fresh ears to hear, to break bread, and never lose our mutual focus on hope. Thank you for the tireless efforts of those who put this together, for their labors are not in vain. Help us truly stay present in each given moment together. In your name, I pray. Amen.
Thank you, Chaplain Reeves. All right, I'm going to make a few admin remarks. I'll try to keep them brief because I know you're not here to hear me. You're here to hear the experts. Several things we have. Let me advance the slide here. We'll go over the schedule very briefly. We have 2 remembrances. One this morning, remembrance ceremony, which is the opportunity for you to make some remarks about your loved one and why you're here. So we have one today, and we'll have one tomorrow morning. So don't worry about it. If you didn't get your chance today, you'll get another chance tomorrow. Similarly, we also have a question and answer period at the end of each day's briefings. This morning, you see the various speakers that we have for you and the experts from outside that have come in. It's the afternoon. I'll draw your attention to at 5 p.m., 1700 for those of you who speak military time, in this very same room, DPA and the MPVA hosted reception and family social. This is your chance to get to know each other, mingle amongst yourselves, and also to get to know the staff. Then going on to tomorrow, again, we start out with the remembrance ceremony. We'll have lunch. And then at the end of tomorrow's briefings, we will have another question and answer period. We don't have bathroom breaks built in, so feel free at any time. There's bathrooms at either end, and just try to be a little bit quiet as you come and go, but it shouldn't be an issue. And this year we have, you'll notice in your folders, you'll see a survey, but we also have a QR code that you can scan if you want to do it online. For those of you that are tech savvy, if you have any issues with that, just look for someone younger than I am, and they'll show you exactly how you can do it. So anyway, and with that, we are now going to roll into our remembrance ceremony. Please raise your hand. We will have personnel with microphones. Do me a favor. It's hard for all of us. We got a lot of people. This is a very big room. We have a lot of people in here, so keep the microphone close to your mouth. It seems a little bit unnatural, but it's the best way for everyone to hear your story and why you're here. So who wants to be the brave soul and start us out on there? Just wait till someone with a microphone to get to you. This lady right down here.
Good morning. My name is Judith Britton. I bring you greetings from the great state of Land of Enchantment, New Mexico. It's so nice to see all of you again. We've been here many times, and it's always a pleasure. I'm here to honor my uncle, First Lieutenant Charles Melvin Andrews from the great town of Groesbeck, Texas, outside of Waco. My uncle Charles was a jet fighter pilot. He had the pleasure of flying the Shooting Stars, which were the first jets in aerial combat. At a very young age, he developed asthma, severe asthma. His doctor said, "Charles, if you'll take your horrible medicine, I will let you fly in my airplane, my little Piper Cub." So after school, he met with the doctor. Dr. Cox took him up in the Piper Cub, and he learned to fly airplanes before he ever learned to drive a car. He had airplanes hanging from his ceiling in his room because when he missed school, my grandmother would let him buy a box of airplane for 10 cents, and he would put it together with that horrible airplane glue, and he strung it with fishing wire from his ceiling. And my grandmother never took those down after he was missing. He was shot down in at Sunan Air Base in North Korea. His jet was hit in the tail. He went into a spin, and there were witnesses, and so there's no body recovered. We are very fortunate and very blessed to have a monument in Arlington Cemetery. He is enshrined in 5 places in the world in granite, marble, stone. And my sweet husband of 58 years, made a promise that he would take me to visit every single one of those places, from Seoul, Korea, to Hawaii, to Groesbeck, Texas, to the wall here, the Korean Wall, as well as Arlington. I thank each one of you for your precious attention. That's the greatest gift you can give someone, and I thank you for that, and I'm delighted to be here. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Raise your hand. I believe there were some.
I'm Mary Jo Loftus. I'm here with my sister Suzanne, and this is regarding our father. So he was a major. Our last name was Major, so Major George Major was our dad. He was with the Marines. He was with a Marine Fighter Squadron, the MMP 311 Aircraft Group 33, and he was with the 1st Marine Aircraft Wing. He left California the middle of December of 21. He was shot down January 3rd, 1922, left my mother with 5 children under the age of 7. We are very proud of him. We're proud of this group that we were able to find all of his records of his flights in Korea. And so we always want to honor him. And that's why we come to this group for many years. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's John. I'm here representing Captain Warren Sanderson, who was my great uncle. His plane went down in the Sea of Japan in 1953. And the first thing I just want to say is, obviously I'm on the younger side here. I just want to encourage everyone here to share your stories with the younger generations. I know we may not seem like it, but we do want to hear, and it is important to us. So that's the first thing I want to say, and that brings me to my second point, which is, I heard you mention how important it is to your family that having the memorials and that the name is on the wall. Unfortunately for my great uncle, that's not the case. And I know there might be a couple of you here who are here representing someone who didn't get their name on the wall. And so why I'm here is to try to fight for that, because I know it's special to me to hear that he lost his life serving our country and looking out for our livelihood, and he's not recognized on the wall, and it's not just him, his 17 other crewmates. So that's why I wanted to come here and try to fight to get his name on the wall and learn more about his story, and I encourage all you to do the same. Thank you.
Thank you. Raise your hands, folks, and someone with a microphone will come to you.
Hello, Cynthia Fisher. My great-great-uncle is PFC Donald Wayne Eads. MIA Korea, March 26, 1953. We had one other that has been recovered and returned. He just recently lost his brother to Parkinson's disease, so he has one sister left, and I'm the next person in line to take over the cases. And we may have 2 more from the Army, so I need to find the Army guys. We have 2 more Eads that I need to track down the DNA and the family tree. And I don't just keep on going. First year, y'all didn't have all this recording. And then Chuck always got on to me. He's like, what are you doing? You're recording it. I'm like, yeah, because I take it home and show it to the family and put it on my Facebook or whatnot. And now you're all back here streaming it. See how many people you have now compared to a few years ago. So thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Steve Salisbury. I'm here with my youngest brother, Chris. We're from Michigan, and we're here for Norman R. Ford, who'd be our uncle that we had never met. He was reported missing in 1956, they declared him unrecoverable, and he was a sergeant in Company C, 38th Infantry Regiment. We never met him. My father never met him. They were separated at birth and orphans, and he was in Korea. At the same time his brother was there, they never met. So he searched for him after he returned and never was able to get any news on him, and he passed away in 2009, and we're here to just continue on that search for his remains. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing.
I'm not used to this. My name is Roseanne Sally. I'm from Bellevue, Washington. My first husband was First Lieutenant Carl Seidel, and he was on summer duty at Camp Pendleton in 1950 when the war broke out, and he had studied Korean for some of his college courses at the University of Washington, and consequently they needed him to go to Korea when the war broke out suddenly. I was in the hospital delivering our second baby at the time, and we corresponded, and I lost him on the retreat from the Yalu River and the reservoir just before Christmas, 1950. And his two children had no memory of him. I'm 98 now, and my late husband tomorrow would have been 100. And so it's kind of a special time for me to be here. And I just wanted to recommend, he won a Silver Star, by the way, and of course the Purple Heart. And we were proud of what he did. And this is my daughter standing by me.
Hi, I'm Ruth, and as she said, I have no memory at all of my father, but I have a great legacy in him. And I want to say I'm so thankful for these meetings. I really am. Those of us here share something that is so deep and so precious, and it's really a great group to spend time with. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mary Liverman, and this is my sister, Robbie Hellman. We're here from Denton and Ponder, Texas. Robbie and I are here again this year for our uncle, Private Charles Edward DeWeese. He was in the 38th Infantry Regiment, Company C, 2nd Infantry Division. He was killed on September the 30th, 1951, at Heartbreak Ridge. They were on a patrol job as they neared the top of the hill, and they were suddenly halted by intense enemy small arms and machine gun fire. Private DeWeese and another soldier realized the seriousness of the situation, advanced and destroyed 3 enemy bunkers while inflicting numerous casualties upon the enemy. When the patrol was forced to withdraw, Private DeWeese and the unknown soldier stayed behind and rendered supporting fire for their comrades. Private DeWeese and this unknown soldier were fatally wounded. I'm the last living relative that actually knew Private DeWeese. At last year's DPAA meeting, I shared the last 2 days of Private Charles DeWeese's life with his family. I was a little girl, but my few memories are so vivid today, over 70 years later, as if it was yesterday. I can close my eyes and see my family and grandparents waving goodbye as Uncle Charles drove out of sight. He was headed to Korea. We never saw him again. Robbie and I promised our father we would bring Uncle Charles home. Our father and his brother and sister made that same promise to his parents. I just pray this is the year that we bring him home. Excuse me. Everyone here is wanting the same thing. We want our loved one, our American hero, to come home. We all know the price of freedom is not cheap. Our loved ones, our soldiers, they have paid that price for us in full. We owe our soldiers and their families everything. Look around this room. Look in the eyes. The eyes tell of what freedom costs. I am so proud of all of our soldiers. We all need to do our part to work with DPAA and MACRI to help locate our heroes and bring them home to American soil. Robbie and I met so many nice people here last year, and we left here armed with information and more determined than ever to bring Private Charles Edward DeWeese home. I want to say thank you to DPAA, MACRI, and to all of our military that stand guard for our country. God bless you all, and God bless America.
Thank you.
Hello. I'm Sergeant First Class retired Tyrone Beck, and I'm here to honor my father, Sergeant First Class Henry Lee Walker, which was in the 2nd Infantry Division. And he came up missing in December 1950. But when I saw him, I was very little, and he gave me a candy bar, talked to me for a little bit, and that was the last time I saw him. But I appreciate it of you bringing me here so I can find out some questions I might have of his finding. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shannon, and I'm here with my mother, Barony Grisham, and we've come from California. We rode an Amtrak train across the country to be here so that she could come. She's usually in a hospital bed, so we're very happy to be here. We are representing my grandfather, Captain David Howard Grisham of the United States Air Force, and he went down or missing. He essentially disappeared in a cloud in 1950, and so his whereabouts have never been discovered, and I know we all share that. I guess what I want to just point out or speak to is the generational ripples that occur. So my mom has been very active, and I'm trying to be a strong family member for her because she can only go so far, right? And then we have to pass the torch. So it's the younger generation's responsibilities to know the stories, to understand, our lineage and how to act accordingly. So I am on the hunt for information always. I want to find out what happened to my grandfather. He was a noble man. Death is a gift because it's finite. Missing in action, is a different title. It's a pause that you never really get to find closure with. So it's something different. And the generational piece, I spent my entire childhood at these meetings across the country, in different locations. And so it's just really beautiful to be here with you all in our nation's capital, to see it at such a high level, especially over the years as this has developed, and to have this this wonderful thing that we have, to be able to have the dignity and the civility to look at, our members, our family members, our service members, to be able to honor them in this manner is quite a thing for all of us. And I think that we should be proud of our country and each other, that we hold ourselves to this regard. So thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. It is wonderful to be here with my Korean War family. To see most of you that I see from year to year. This represents something very special to us. All of us lost someone in the same 3 years. And that's why we're here. And this is a room called Hope. This is what we're all here about. This is a room full of hope. To honor, we must remember. And to remember, we must know. So I will tell my brother's story, part of it, as I do every year, just like you do, and we keep on telling these stories. I am Brenda Doolin Lott. I am here to honor my brother, Corporal Daniel Doolin, of the 187th Regiment, I Company, 3rd Battalion. He was a paratrooper. He was dropped into North Korea as a part of a mission to stop the train, capture the North Korean brass that had just left Pyongyang, having been taken over by the UN forces. And they were to free the POWs. And of course, many of you in here can attest to the fact that you know that those POWs had just been executed. So it was a failed mission in that respect. He died in the Battle of Suncheon, October 21st, 1950. He was buried in the newly established Pyongyang Cemetery. After the war was over, during Operation Glory, his body and his remains have not been returned. He died just 24 hours after leaving Kimpo Air Base, dropped into North Korea. He was 18 years old. I was 6. I always say this to everyone. Dan was my first love and my first grief. Just 2 months before his death, he wrote a letter, and in it he said, "I won't forget Brenda. I guess she's a big girl now." He's right. I say, "Dan, I won't forget you." He carried me in his arms, and I was told even from the time as a baby, a diaper in his back pocket. He introduced me to the ocean, to movies, and to a bike. He carried me in his arms. I now carry him in my heart. And I am grateful, strangely as it may seem, I am grateful that I've had this opportunity to make this journey and have this sweet longing to find my brother. You all know what I mean by that. This journey is very important in my life. What happened to him matters, and what remains of him matters. Our family daily passed his photo in a frame on a small table in the living room. It seemed natural that he was just a part of us. He watched us move around that house all the time. As we moved from house to house during our childhood, we thought of him as our handsome brother who followed along with us. He was a constant person in our life, even though I'm the only one that remembers him. I am the Pinocchio, primary next of kin, as you know, but our family loves him, but I'm the one left with the only memories. So this journey to bring him home feels like a balm over the years of sorrow, just the process of finding him. Our being here in this room today is about promises made, and promises kept. Our collective grief in this room today that we present to the DPAA holds them steadfast to their promise that our government made to leave no soldier behind. And we're holding them to that. And they listen. And there is generational grief. We've just seen this. Great-great-grandchildren I have met here. Nieces and nephews, cousins. It's a generational grief that we all share. Our DPAA does the breadth of research for thousands of families. We do the depth of one soldier. So everything that we know about our soldier, please pass that on to anyone who will listen, because with all of us working together, more can get done. The Korean War is not forgotten, and neither is the victory. South Korea lives in that victory. Those of us who travel to South Korea, where are you? Those of us who have traveled to South Korea, many of you, I was with you. Mike and I were there with you for some of you. We heard and saw and witnessed a grateful nation. I can remember that it was amazing that the first monument that I've ever seen with my brother's name on it was in North Korea. We now have one that we have fought for. We honored 2 years ago. When Korea, Seoul, was devastated, had to come from the ashes, it was just a few decades after that that they erected up a wall of remembrance, and all of their names are on that wall. And when I touched my brother's name, I truly felt I could mourn for a real person. It's difficult to mourn without a body. But standing there and touching his name, which consists of a family name, he belonged to a family, and then a given name, which meant that he was an individual who lived and then died. Touching that name was very, very important to me. I was asked to speak in Korea, in South Korea, write a letter that you would like to your brother to read. So I read it to a big group of people there, and I said, Dan, they did not know your name, they did not know your face, but they knew your presence, and they put it on a wall. And as the young man said here, when you don't have that name on the wall and there's no body, where do you go? So to honor, we must remember, and we must keep telling our stories over and over and over again. That's what I do. a Korean woman in my neighborhood, a Korean graduate student I saw standing in a lobby of a hotel, the owner of a children's clothing store in my town. And most of the ones I get to talk to are in the Y exercise classes that I go to 4 times a week, and mostly the Zumba classes. I'm getting back to there with a new knee, not there yet. But these Koreans in there, I always, when I think I'm speaking to a Korean, 안녕하세요. And they say, oh, you speak Korean. I'm like, well, yeah, if 3 words count. And they then never fail to tell me or to ask me, why do I know Korean? And then I tell them the story of my brother. I tell them I was in their country and how much it meant for me to stand on the soil. The last soil he would ever stand on is that peninsula. And they always say to me, without fail, every one of them, I want to thank your brother, and I want to say I'm sorry to you, but I say thank you for my country. And these are young people and much older people that say this. So it's important that we keep doing that, is to keep telling our stories over and over. I will be 80 next month, and Dan would be 92. I want to know what happened to him, and I want to bring him home. He will always be a part of the Korean Peninsula. I am a part of that too, that's of knowing that he was there, that his first remains were there. But he belongs home. People ask me how I keep doing this. I speak in my community or wherever anybody will listen. And they say, how do you keep doing that? What are the chances that will happen? And then I tell them how many people have been identified, how many people we do know what happened to them. And they'll say, but you'll get so little back. How can that matter that much? Don't you just get tired, of doing it and without ever getting really any hope? And I always say to them, I'm not looking just for remains. I'm looking for a person, and his name is Daniel Marion Doolin. It's not hard to do it all because he's my brother. 감사합니다.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good morning. My name is Martin Paeta. I'm here with my wife, Gwen. We're from Snohomish, Washington, and we're here to remember my grandfather, Frank Martin III, who is a Navy fighter pilot. He flew Corsairs off of the USS Princeton and flew with VF-871. In 1951, he had been deployed and flew many missions. Reading letters that he had written to my grandmother, talked about how, unlike in World War II, where they would fly a mission, have maybe a break, and then fly more missions, in Korea they were flying multiple missions per day, every day, and in the night. And the night that my grandfather died, he was flying a CAS mission, and his aircraft was reported to be hit, and he crashed into a mountain and not recoverable. I guess there had been 2 times that they had gone up there, and the first time it was snow covered. The second time they weren't able to find remains. This was back in the later 50s. From there, I don't know if anything else has been done, and that's kind of what we're here to find out. Thank you.
Okay. Good morning. My name's Jackie Gagnon from Boston, Mass. I'm here for my uncle, along with my husband, Kevin. Get these on here. In 2006, Chris Manu, a retired Air Force lieutenant colonel, suggested to me to contact the MIA POW office after I had mentioned to him that I had an uncle who served in the Korean War and who was shot down in a B-29 fighter plane in 1952, a few weeks before he was due to come home. John was my father's only brother, nicknamed Jackie, my namesake. There was always a curiosity factor to find out about him and what he looked like. My father never spoke about him. I did not know much about my uncle until the day I decided to call the MIA POW office located at the Randolph Air Force Base in San Antonio. Miss Susan Williams answered, and when I mentioned my uncle's name, she said it's about time someone came looking for him. It had been over 50 years. My heart sank. My uncle was real to me now. Susan sent me every record they had for him. I'm forever grateful that the DPAA organization conducts these annual updates to let families know about the search and recovery efforts of all the war conflicts. I started attending each year to find out more about my uncle. He was 24 years old, and his position was a left tail gunner on a plane named Miss Jackie the Rebel with the 30th Bomb Squadron. Miss Jackie, the B-29A Super Fortress aircraft, was shot 3 times in the evening of June 10, 1952, by a Russian MiG while on a mission to bomb a railroad at Kwaksin, North Korea. There were 13 crew members on board. Eyewitness accounts said that the plane was in pieces over the bay, completely over the bay. The other plane circled back to the Kadena Air Force Base that night, badly damaged. Since attending these annual meetings here, I've been blessed to meet 9 relatives from the Miss Jackie crew, mostly nieces and nephews like myself. They had similar stories to mine. They never met their uncle, but they were curious as well. So over the past several years, we've had 5 military interments at Arlington National Cemetery for our crew members, which included formal procession, folding and presenting of the American flag, flyovers, taps, and a 21-gun salute. All right. The following heroes who have been memorialized in Section 27 from the same flight crew of Miss Jackie, the Rebel, are my uncle, John F. Flaherty, October 18th in 2007, which was 3 days, which would have been his 79th birthday, John H. Arrington, Richard M. Friedman, Westerfelt C. Stagg Jr., Marvin J. Cessna Jr. Miss Susan Williams, who received the initial call from me, was granted permission and was honored to present me with my Uncle Jack's American flag, 6 medals, and his Purple Heart. Prayerfully, we will keep all of these heroes' names alive and lifted up. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello, my name is Ruby Smith Bryant. I'd always heard about Uncle Arlen. He was in the Korean War. He was a frontline medic, and he was in, I can't even remember the name, Yangdong Ma Na is where he was the last time they saw him. And he was, I know they was just, you can just imagine they was out there, they was going as fast and as hard as they could to help every person that was injured, and they were not thinking of themselves. They was thinking of the other person out there. And they think that he stepped on a live mine, and they don't think that there was anything hardly left of him. They couldn't even find his dog tags, according to some members of my family. My daddy was in the Korean War just after that. He was just younger than my Uncle Arlen. And Daddy was kind of like the Private Ryan story. He got to go all over the Korea and try to find him and looked in all the POW MIA places, and he never found him. They all gave up hope, but I can't give up hope. Uncle Arlen deserves to come home just like the rest of them does. And I'm so thankful for the DPAA that they are here to help us and just to give us hope that we can find them. And he has a grave marker, but I would love to be able to put something there beside his mother to say that he is home and that he is safe. Uncle Arlen was in the Army, of course, and I told you, he was in the frontline medic. I could tell you so much more when I sit down, but, you know, we all have a short time. Thank you all so very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
My name is Ann Shepherd Winstead, and I'm here with my sister, Gloria McCall. And I just want to say his name. My uncle's name is Private First Class Johnny Street. And I just want to share a little bit of information about him so that if there's anybody who has a family member who have some similar backgrounds, that's familiar with this situation we can communicate with. He was assigned to the G Company, the 2nd Battalion, the 32nd Infantry Regiment, 7th Infantry Division. He was missing in action on October 24, 1953, and presumed dead on December 31 of 1953. I'm here on behalf of my family. My father served in the military, and during my growing up days, he never mentioned anything more about his brother except to say he went away and he never came back. And now that my dad is gone, I can't ask him more about it. And so when I was contacted in 2015 by the military to say I'm the primary next of kin, that's when I got involved with this. And I've learned so much, and I'm so appreciative to the people who have provided this information. My sister and I got an opportunity to go to South Korea, and that was an experience that I wish everybody had the opportunity to have. It was wonderful. But it gave me a little bit more context about what was going on in the war. I have been involved with this since 2015. I don't think I've missed one of these briefings. We've had the pleasure and the honor of having an honorable ceremony for him at Arlington, and I'm most appreciative for that. The one thing that I want to say before sitting down is that I was so inspired by the young man who spoke about his journey, because I know we're getting up in age, and I was just so happy that my sister's son, Robert McFadden, is very involved in ancestry and trying to learn as much as he can about our family. And he was slated to come, and he's young, but he's so robust in his interest in this that I'm just so happy for that, because I know we are not going to be here to carry this baton. But thank you so much for everything that you've done for us in this journey that we're on, and I look forward to the rest of the activities that we're here for. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I call on the next person, you reminded me I neglected to mention, across from the Army room is a whiteboard for precisely what you wanted to connect with other families in similar loss incidents and all that. So it's over here to your left by the Army room, okay? Now I'm going to go back here.
Hello, my name is Rudy Mesa, and this is my 4th time coming. The vest that I'm wearing, my wife made about 5 years ago, and this is to pay tribute to my dad that was killed in Korea in 1950, October the 20th. I used to wear this vest 3 times a year. On this date that he died, Memorial Day and Veterans Day. Now I wear it when I come here. I'm 74 now, and so I brought my 2 children to follow up on this when I'm going to check out. And I'd like to thank everybody involved here, and especially all the information that I've gotten on my dad. Thank you very much.
Mike?
Hello, my name is Marion Gallier-Kios. I am here to honor my uncle, whom I never met, my mother's older brother. His name was Airman First Class Clarence Watson Wheelwright. His nickname was Waddy. He was part of a gunner assigned to the 13th Bomb Squad and the 3rd Bomb Wing. He was listed as missing in action on May 31st, 1952. He had gone from Kusan Air Base on board a B-26 Invader. It was a single plane mission at night, and it was targeting an enemy supply route known as Purple 2 between Sinagu and the Yalu rivers. including the coastal roads and rail lines in the northwest of North Korea. And it was an especially dangerous mission because it was part of the famous MiG-Ali group, and it was heavily patrolled by the enemy. His plane was piloted by Lieutenant Colonel Ray Edwards Wells from Pennsylvania, and he was the pilot, and First Lieutenant Robert James Ramsey, whom was the navigator from California. My uncle was a tail gunner and the radio operator. The plane supposedly was shot down by a Russian enemy and crashed near the village of Ankiri, near the Suncheon region. And the pilot's dog tags were found in a Russian file, but the bodies have never been found of the three on the crew. Supposedly the next day, Korean villagers buried the bodies. What I request, if any of you all know the families of the pilot, Mr. Wells, or of the navigator, James Ramsey, I would love to connect with them. Also, my parents used to come to this. They were not digitally oriented. My mom now has Alzheimer's and could not look for her brother anymore, so I have picked up this mantle. I found doing a just internet search, there was an article on August 1st, 2018, in the Tennessean talking about bringing remains home. There was a gentleman who was in the Air Force with my uncle and was a friend of my uncle named Jake Wallace. He was from Tennessee. He kept searching for my uncle. He was the last person. He had a beer with my uncle the night my uncle went off on his mission and didn't come home. Jake Wallace and my uncle and another buddy from Baltimore, which is where my uncle was from, would do intelligence and debriefings after missions of people coming back. He kept looking for my uncle. I would love, if he is still alive, to be able to connect with him. Since he knew my uncle, I never had that privilege. But if anyone knows how to get in touch with Air Force veterans in Tennessee, particularly Nashville, or knows of Jake Wallace, I would particularly love to connect with him. And I thank him for keeping on, wanting to help find answers about his buddies over in Korea. And I honor my uncle for the incredible service that he gave for all of us to have the privilege of democracy and freedom. And I thank you all for being here today, for all of us to be able to do those honorings. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Sylvia Taylor Braggs, and I'm here because my uncle, Mott Taylor, was lost in 1950 and missing in action. He was with the transportation unit, L Company, 3rd Battalion, and in our family, I never met him because he was missing in action before I was born. However, my grandmother always said, no, he is not dead. He's coming back. And so the family always, would not dispute that with her.
And my aunt, who passed away in 2022, asked me if I would, she had come to several of these events and asked me would I be responsible for the continuance of it. And since I have a degree in journalism, and not just because of that, it's because it was the right thing to do. And I've been attending for several years, and I've been talking with my daughter and two of my granddaughters who also decided to study communication. And so they have assured me that when I can't come anymore, that they would still attend. And before I go any further, I want to thank this organization because even though I never knew my uncle, I feel that the work and the information that I was able to find out through attending these sessions and through working with the facilitator that I've worked with, that I feel like I know him. And each time I come, I always have a Zoom with the family to give them updates. I was able to get my uncle's medals last year, and they sent them to me. And it was a very emotional time for my family. You know, we received the Purple Heart, about 8 different medals. And this, I want to thank this organization because the work that you do is very, very important. You know, we lost our uncle. I had never met him, but it's important to the families that have lost people to know that this organization exists and people do care about what happened. I have 3 brothers, and all 3 of them served in the military, one in the Navy, retired from the Navy, one retired from the Air Force, one in the Marines, and my grandfather and my father both was in the military. So what they do is very important, no matter what rank they are or anything like that. And it is important that all the families who have lost someone know that this organization is here and they care and our country care. And we are very, very happy to be Americans. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is David Murray. I'm here with my son, Kevin, to honor my brother, Dwayne Murray. I was 11 years old when we found out that he went missing. My mother had gotten a card from him in July of 1951. He went missing the night of November 1951. He had barely got there. The information that we got at the time, my family got, was very, very sketchy because there was very little information that they could glean. But as time went on, I got more and more information. But I have attended all of the briefings that the government has had across the U.S. Originally, we were from a small town in Kansas called Mankato, and now I live in Orange Park, Florida, and I had attended one of the government briefings in Jacksonville, Florida. When I was there, one of the casualty officers said, "You got to meet this gentleman." And I talked with the gentleman, and come to find out that particular gentleman was on the hill the night my brother went missing and told me what's transpired the very night of the battle. There was 25 guys in his squad. There were 3 squads on the hill. It was Hill 200 near Shorewon, North Korea. And he said, and I still believe this to this day, it was awesome. He said, we were overrun by over 1,000 Chinese troops, and there was possibly about 100 guys on the hill that night, And he said, the one that made my blood run cold was, he said, we couldn't kill him fast enough. They overran us. He was taken prisoner, was repatriated, but at least I got to hear what transpired that night. He didn't know my brother, but I got that particular information from him. He even showed me the picture. I don't know how he got it, but he had a picture of the hill and of his group that was left before that night. So my brother made the ultimate sacrifice for this country. Thank you.
Howdy. Oh, a little closer. Howdy. My name's Cecilia. I'm from Texas, and I'm here on behalf of my great uncle, Sergeant Frank Velasco. He was assigned to A Company, 1st Battalion, 32nd Infantry Regiment. He went MIA on December 2nd, 1950, during a Chosin Reservoir battle. I've been attending these meetings, whether it's in Texas through the Lone Star Division or at the national level here, since I was 6 years old with my grandparents. Unfortunately, I lost both of them 2 years ago. My grandfather, it was his brother that was lost. He wasn't able to see the monument, but my grandma was able to. His name is at the monument here in D.C., in Hawaii, Korea, and then we also have a personal plaque for him in our local cemetery so that we can remember him by. Although I never met my great uncle personally, my grandfather was very young when this happened. He was only 5 years old. And while he has some memories of his brother, his biggest memory is the Army coming to his house and telling his mother that his brother had been lost. He remembers her crying for a whole month and being unable to really fully understand the graveness of the situation. All he could do was to be there for her. It wasn't until later he finally understood and took up the mantle from his mother, who ended up passing away a little bit after that, to make sure that he could find his brother. Ever since I could sit still in a chair is when he started bringing me to these meetings. He had hoped to find his brother before he passed away himself, but unfortunately he was unable to, which is why he brought me to these meetings so that I could take up the mantle for him afterwards so that we can hopefully find his brother in this lifetime. And I always come to these meetings and I see so many hopeful faces. We're all looking for the same answers together, and hopefully we can all find them together. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Nathaniel Jenkins, and I'm here to honor my uncle, Uncle Hampy, as we called him. His name was Cain Hamilton Chisholm. He was one of 7 children born to my maternal grandparents, Caroline and Christopher Chisholm of Watermelon Island, South Carolina. I remember a very faint memory. I was probably 4 or 5 years old, and I remember my uncle grabbing his duffel bag and leaving home for the very last time. It was not only he, but of the 5 boys that my grandmother had, 4 of them served in the United States Army between World War II and the Korean War. 4 came back, and Uncle Hampy did not. We're trying to find the specifics of what really happened to him. The narrative that we have and have been studying talks heavily about infantry battle, but he was trained as a tank for a tank battalion. He was also a PFC before he went to a career, and the information said he was given the rank of PFC once it was determined that he was missing in action. But we are we're just delighted, and we praise the organization for continuing this fight to bring all of our MIA POWs back home. And I just want to stand and honor my uncle. All of his siblings have passed on. My oldest sister used to dismantle, but she has suffered a stroke and she is not able to continue. So my wife and I, Sally, we decided that we would do that. I was also happy to find that one of my uncle's children is also continuing this fight to find out what happened to Uncle Hampy. We're people that whose boys have always risen to serve this country. As I stated, my grandmother had 5 boys, and God in his infinite wisdom made Uncle Hampy a twin, knowing that he would not be coming home. So Uncle Charlie passed away about 12 years ago. He was Uncle Hampy's twin, and we got to see what Uncle Hampy would have looked like as an adult. But as I said, 4 of them came back, and Uncle Hampy did not come back from Korea. The information said in a skirmish, after the skirmish in 1950, around November of 1950, they couldn't find him, and it was determined that he was either killed or taken as POW, and later determined that he died on the march back to a prisoner camp, probably from wounds that he had received, if the information does reflect him. So we honor our uncle every Memorial Day. I do, by putting an oversized photograph of his Army picture, PFC cane, under a flag, under an oak tree in our front yard, and say, MIA, we want you to come home. So please continue to fight to bring our fallen soldiers back home, because they had the courage that when this nation needed them, they rose to the occasion, and they fought to keep us all free. So thank you for what you do.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Michael Tejeda. I'm the primary next of kin of my father, Major Francisco Tejeda. He was in an RB-50, which was shot down off the Russian coast, not far from Vladivostok in the open ocean in the Sea of Japan. On July 29th, 1953, 2 MiG fighters shot down the RB-50 over the Sea of Japan. Out of 17 crew members, 14 were never recovered. These RB-50s were the early AWACS planes. They were the first AWACS planes, if you're familiar with that. I was 9 when this happened, and I always understood that he died in the Great Crusade against communism, an effort which, for my part, ended when I saw the wall come down in Berlin in the late 80s. I thank this organization for keeping alive the memory of the Cold Warriors like my father, who are too often forgotten in history books. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. I really am grateful to be here. My name is Karen Piper. I'm from Illinois. My uncle, Sergeant, I'm sorry, I'm having a hard time, Herbert Vichard. He was in North Korea, and he just became 20 on November 28th. And then he was captured and became a prisoner of war. Obviously, he was tortured. He was hurt, and he couldn't keep up with the march, and there was blood where he fell, and the Chinese soldiers pushed him, and he couldn't walk, and so he ended up falling, and because of that, they shot him. And the troops saw him, and they ran to try to assist him, but they couldn't, and they had to leave him alone. My grandmother received a letter, the last letter or the final letter, which stated, "When you hear the music and you hear this song, I'm coming home for Christmas. That's my song to you." And he never came home. We don't want to give up, and we're living to bring his remains home and give him the burial that he needs, that my parents were searching for. Thank you to DPAA for all of your work. Keep up the good work, and our love goes out to everyone who's here in attendance.
Thank you. Good.
Thank you to the DPAA and all of you here. It's a wonderful thing to be able to share experiences and hear your stories, and I'll tell you a little bit of mine. I'm here with my wife, Barbara Billings, who never knew my dad, nor did I. He was killed when I was 18 months old. I'm also representing my 94-year-old mother who can't come to these meetings because she's in early dementia and in home hospice with my loving siblings who are taking care of her every day. Her husband, John D., also known as Jack Nadelhofer, was in Marine Air Group 12, Wing Marine 1, VMF 212. He was trained as a fighter pilot in World War II after he graduated from high school in Gurnee, Illinois in 1942. Spent 2 years being trained as a naval aviator Marine. Saw very little action in World War II because he was mostly training, but in the interwar period he was in the reserves, Marine Reserves, flying out of Glenview Naval Air Base. He was, among other things, he was a semi-pro professional football player, and so that's why my name is Knut, or Newt. It's an odd name for an American, but it's a common one in Denmark and Norway. My wife's Norwegian American, and I'm kind of German American and Irish. So anyway, my dad's, I'll keep this short because I want to read part of a letter, but my dad he flew off of the USS Bedouin Strait, and if anyone's here who had a relative on the Bedouin Strait or the Rendova, another carrier he flew off of. Oh, okay. I would love to talk with you. And I'm really intrigued by all the naval or all the aviator stories that are here, because I know our aviator loved ones are mostly buried in isolated places. They're not in big battlegrounds where remains come back in boxes. The DPAA and the government have to go to special efforts to retrieve those remains. My dad's location is well known, thanks to you all, your organization. We have that information. And we're all sad. We've all experienced trauma, but we're all lucky too, especially if we know the stories. And I consider myself extremely lucky because I've been provided with so much information by this organization and the military, and by people like you who worked, who have these experiences. My dad, we know his story from talking with his wingmate. He was on a combat mission over North Korea in 1952. His plane was shot by rifle fire from the ground, and it leaked oil, and he had to bail in January of 1952, January 26th. His wingmate called in a helicopter crew because what happened was in the Corsairs they flew, there were no ejection seats, so he had to throw back the canopy and jump, and like half of all naval aviators who bailed from Corsairs, he got hit by this rear stabilizer. Fell 8,000 feet. His wingmate told us, his wingmate didn't know he'd hit the stabilizer, but he saw him stream. That means your parachute doesn't open, it streams 8,000 feet. I'm happy that my dad didn't experience the terror of falling 8,000 feet without his parachute opening. He was buried by a helicopter crew that didn't have a litter or a stretcher. Buried, wrapped in his parachute and probably buried only a couple feet under the ground because it was January in North Korean island. I'm sure the soil was frozen. And they had to get out of there fast. So my mom got letters home. In 1952, he was buried in a temporary grave, which is he's still in. So he's been in it for 72 years. And I want to end with this. The last thing, I was honored, given a whole box of letters from my grandma, Marion Nadelhofer, and my mother, who's 94 and can hardly see. And these letters are in bundles. I haven't even counted them because they're in. He was a consummate letter writer, both in World War II and Korea. Wrote a letter every other day. So there's a big box of letters that I'm carefully opening, reading, and then I'm going to scan and digitize them for the family and give them to the Library of Congress for anyone to read. And I want to read something from a letter my mother got from Lieutenant Colonel Joseph Gray, U.S. Marine Corps commanding officer of my dad's ship. This page of the letter says, "We are assembled here in loving memory of Captain John D. Nadelhofer, United States Marine Corps, who was born on June 2nd, 1924, and departed this life on 26th of January, 1952. He was aged 27 years, 7 months, and 2 days. He is survived by his wife, Elizabeth, also known as Betty, infant son, Newt, that's me, and as well as his mother, Mrs. Marion Nadelhofer." Now, my mom was 8 months pregnant when my dad was killed, so it didn't come as good news. She was living with her brother and sister-in-law while my dad was in Korea, and then a month later, my brother Jack, who's named after my dad, was born. Anyway, in this letter, Captain Gray copied the eulogy that the ship's chaplain gave at the funeral 2 days after my dad was killed, the shipboard ceremony. And I'd like to read it to you because it's a piece of literature that I've never seen anywhere, and I'm amazed this guy wrote this. It's called The Cloud of Witnesses. "Until it was pointed out, a person is likely to miss out on the glories of Raphael's Sistine Madonna. The Madonna with the infant Jesus, 2 cherubs, and other details catch the eye first, as they are intended to do. Yet if we see nothing else, we miss the magic of this great sermon in paint. If one looks closely at the background of the gray-blue cloud, there will be seen that it is not a cloud at all. It is a vast crowd of cherubic faces, so closely linked together that they make a cloud background for the Madonna and the child. The cloud takes shape. It is the cloud of witnesses to the great fact of the incarnation. So we may rest our minds in confident faith that Jack is surrounded by that cloud of witnesses which surrounded the Madonna and the child. You and I may talk in our minds of the incompleteness of life on earth, the seeming unfairness when things like this happen, but we forget that what we might term an incomplete life becomes completed over there with fulfillment by that cloud of witnesses. And we may be very sure that Jack is among them, for in his quiet, friendly, and sincere life, he portrayed those ideals which will make for this one of God's elect. Then, too, his sincerity and his faith. He wanted to know the time for Mass, Rosary, and Confession, and in that concern, there was evidence that his faith would carry him through the present and into eternity. Let us then remember him, not how he died, but how he lived. For in both he lived unto God, and to God will return, as Masses will be said for the repose of his soul. We are very lucky to have a document like this. And we are very lucky to get to the chance to meet as many of you as we can. So thank you all for coming, and thanks to the DPAA.
Good morning. My name is Chuck, and I'm a nephew of Corporal Charles Wade Shaw. Uncle Chuck was attached with Baker Battery, 57th Field Artillery, along with the units that fought along the Chosin Reservoir in late November, early December 1950. Over the years of my search, I've accumulated a lot of information, a lot of personal stories written by the few survivors of those units, along with the unit records from the units that fought there. I'd be happy to share them with any of you who are searching for answers. Also, I have pictures of the 7 soldiers from Chuck's gun crew, 2 of only which I know, my uncle and another one who was recently recovered. So I'd be glad to share them with any of you who may be looking for these things. Thank you.
Hi, good morning. My name is Ken Ono. I'm here with my sister. We traveled from Hawaii to honor our uncle. He was a private in the infantry, and he was one of thousands that walked the ground, fought up the hills, and unfortunately he died in one of those hills, and his body was not able to be recovered. We found out about these briefings about 2 years ago, and we were sort of surprised, but also delighted that something like this occurred. So we came. My uncle was single, so he had a sister who was my mother. And so we came here for 2 reasons. Number one, to find out more about my uncle, since my sister was yet to be born. I was 1 year old, so I never knew anything about him. My mom grieved in her mind and her heart. So we came for him, and we came for my mom, who, had she known that these briefings had occurred, she would have loved to come here, but she died a couple years ago, so thank you.
Thank you. You, Captain.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Barbara Ramirez Garcia. I represent my family, the Garcia family. All my uncle's siblings are all gone. My uncle's name was Corporal Ismael Garcia, and he served in the, he was in the D Company, 1st Battalion, 32nd Infantry, and he went missing December 2nd of 1952. We honor his memory, and I've been coming several years now, hoping to find answers. The good thing is that I've already told my son is here, and my granddaughter is here, that we have to keep his memory alive. We need to keep coming here and getting answers, that, and we're hoping that one day we'll get the good news that he's been found. He was killed in the Chosin Reservoir area. That's where it got overrun on November the 28th and 29th, and after that, my uncle went missing. The memory that we have is of my grandmother, his mother. Every Mother's Day, my grandmother would tell my aunt to make her look very pretty. And my aunt finally told her one year, "Mom, we always come here and you always want to look so nice. And we all come here just casual." And she said, "Because one day my son will knock on the door and I want him to see that I'm still waiting for him and that I'm dressed up for Mother's Day waiting for him." So she died still thinking that one day the door would be knocked and he would come in. So we found out about this when my mother was his older sister. My mother was the oldest of the family. And my mother got letters, and one day she said, "You know what? I keep getting these letters from the Army. I don't know what they're about." And I said, I told her what they were, and she said, "Well, I'm not flying. I'm afraid of flying, so you take over." So I've been doing this for almost 16 years, I think. So now I'm going to pass the baton over to my children so that they can always honor his memory and never let it die. Thank you.
All right. I'm gonna have to ask Ryan go over to Robin. She's going to close this out. Remember, we have another remembrance tomorrow. So if you didn't get a chance today, you will have a chance tomorrow. So sorry for anyone who wanted to speak today, but we only have so much time. So with that, I'll ask Robin to go ahead.
Good morning, everybody. I'm glad to see all of you here. Robin Piacini, and my uncle is William Charles Bradley, and I have a picture of him here today. This is my uncle. I felt it was fitting to bring him along to the meeting. He went missing on December 1st of 1950. He was with the 8th Army retreating from near the border of China, and he was a medic. And so he would have been driving a truck, possibly with soldiers that had been injured. But he was caught in what was called the gauntlet. And there's actually a book out there written that contains a lot of information about that. If you are interested, you could let me know. But anyhow, unfortunately, the Chinese were very much present in the Korean War. And what happened was the 8th Army was beginning to be overrun, and the Chinese said, if you get near our border, you can expect something's going to happen. And it did. And unfortunately, he, along with so many other people, were either killed in action or taken as prisoner of war. And so he is probably still in North Korea, somewhere along a POW route, probably not marked. But the thing is, someday maybe we can get back in. I don't think it'll be anytime soon, but I really believe that maybe someday we can get back in there, and a lot of our servicemen that are missing, especially in the POW camps, maybe we could finally bring them home. That's what we have to hope for. But what I wanted also to talk to you about today is I'm also the secretary for a local chapter of the Korean War Vets Association, and that is located in Crossville, Tennessee. And there are a bunch of lovely men that I absolutely love, and it's my very close connection to my uncle. And so they have decided to donate a wreath. It's an artificial wreath, but they're up on the stage. And they wanted to let you know that your loved one is not forgotten, and that they're also very sad, too, that they have comrades that are missing. So what I'd like for you to know is that you have the opportunity to make a small little note on one of these hearts, which will be next to the Army Casualty booth, that you can write to your loved one, even if it's just, I love you. And it will be taken to the Korean War Memorial Friday after the conference is over. So you'll have 2 days to write a note. We just ask, since there's so many of you, that you keep it to like one per family. You can write on both the front and the back. And if we see an excess left over by Friday, we'll let you know that you can, if there's other family members that want something to add to it, they can. But I want to tell you, these veterans that I work with, it's not work, it's pleasure. And I also want to thank Mr. Kelly McKeague for allowing me to do this, and following my suggestion for the board that's out there. I think even tonight, this was such a gift from DPAA to be able to just meet together. This is what we've wanted for so long, and it was such a great surprise that DPAA has decided to do so. Sorry about my hat, I didn't bring any pins. but anyhow, great to be here, communicate with each other, look for people that went missing on the same date, same military branch. Do that work, you'll find your answers, and so God bless all of you. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Robin. Just a little PSA here. Make sure you check when you're meeting with your casualty officer and analyst, your case summary review. Be cognizant of that time. and show up at your appointed room at that time. So that's on you all. So with that, I'm going to ask our director, Kelly McKay, to come to the stage and make his remarks. Thank you all.
Thanks, Mike. Clicker's on top. Distinguished family members, good morning. It is always truly a distinct privilege and honor for us to be able to host you here in Washington. One would think that whether it's the 7,476 of you whose loved ones were lost in the Korean War, or the 126 of you whose loved ones were lost in the Cold War, that we in the Department of Defense would get lost in the numbers. I can assure you that is absolutely not the case. Obviously, our primary role and responsibility, humble responsibility, is to account for your loved one. Just as important to that is the fact that we are obligated to communicate with you. But as I told our team this morning, it's more than just communicating. It's connecting with you. So I thank you for the last hour of you sharing on your heart and giving the why, to manifest the why for all of us. We don't need motivation to do what we do, but we are inspired, whether it's the twin uncle that is all the family had, whether it's being carried by your brother with a diaper in his bag, in his pocket, or the fact that your husband is turning 100 tomorrow, the beautiful eulogy shared by the chaplain on your father's ship, or your last memory being the candy that you received from your dad. All of these stories matter. And it matters because it is the why of why this nation does what it does, to the degree that it does, that no other country can talk about, no other country can point to. It's emblematic of our values as Americans, and more importantly, it's that fulfillment of, as someone beautifully said, it's that promise. DPA's motto is fulfilling the nation's promise. I was with the American Legion. I will be with the American Legion later this month, but last week I was with the Disabled American Veterans, and before that, the VFW, the comrades in arms of your loved ones. And as I told them, this is a sacred mission. It's a sacred mission because your loved one made the supreme sacrifice for the nation we all love. It's also a moral imperative because we owe you answers. What I'd like to share with you this morning, regrettably, is not answers, but more importantly, an overview of exactly what it is we are dealing with in this fulfillment of fulfilling the promise to you and your loved ones. Am I up, Russ? It's not moving. 1 minute. You guys want to do it manually? It's not moving. Go ahead. Next. No, I gave him a slide. All right. It's a good thing I took tap dancing lessons last week. Because I will tap dance for you for the next 20 minutes. All right, several things I wanted to chat with you about and more importantly provide you an update on. Number one, this mission, your loved one's mission, is still embedded in the hearts and minds of not only the Department of Defense, but the U.S. Congress. We are blessed that this is the first year, and you remember last year I spoke to you about the fact that our budget had remained flat for many years. Last year, the Pentagon increased that budget. This is the first year that that budget was actually put into place. What that means in reality and practically speaking is the fact that we now have more resources with which to do more in terms of primarily field activities. And you'll hear from my colleagues later this morning and tomorrow about how those field activities translate, particularly for the Korean War, where our partner, who you'll hear from this afternoon, is a strong partner for us. And so, again, please be assured that this is not a resource-constrained effort on DPA's part. We have enough resources with which to do what you expect us to do. In terms of the fact that we have a strong partner. So we work in 46 countries all over the world, stretching from the Pacific all the way to Europe. And in these 46 countries, by far, the strongest, the most professional partner is the South Korean government, to which you can take great pride in. Many of you have been to South Korea, so you understand not only their losses and what they're doing about it, but the fact that this organization works hand in glove with us to hopefully provide you answers. And so this partnership that we have in South Korea manifests itself with joint operations. Later this month, we will have a team looking for an underwater Air Force loss that would not happen if it weren't for the cooperation and partnership of the South Korean Navy, who provide us the platform, who provide us the divers, the equipment with which to do this particular mission. So by far, we are very blessed to have the staunch commitment of the South Korean government in this joint activity. Conversely and sadly, and many of you know this, is unfortunately on the north side of the peninsula is the only country out of 46 that does not cooperate at all with the United States. Not only is this unfortunate, but it's a travesty. In fact, I would go so far as to say it's of the utmost proportions, simply because for 5,300 of you, your loved ones are still missing in North Korea. And I'm struck by the fact that for 10 years, we operated with the North Koreans, with the North Korean Army. Dr. John Bird, who many of you know, actually was on 5 of those missions. Very successful. But sadly, the last time we were there was 2005, 19 years ago. That's a travesty. You'll recall that in 2018, because of President Trump's summit with Chairman Kim in Singapore, 55 boxes came to the United States. You'll hear from my colleague Kristen Groh, that 93 Americans have been identified from those boxes. 90 returned to South Korea. A quick story to, again, put a face to this and a story behind it. When I was with the Disabled American Veterans last week in Phoenix, a lady came up to me and she said, "Thank you." She said, "My brother was in box 22. She was 5 years old when her brother went missing. Thanks to DNA with our partner, Dr. McMahon, and the Armed Forces DNA Laboratory, not only were we able to segregate and, more importantly, pinpoint her brother, but because he had Native American heritage, we were able to differentiate the mitochondrial sequence that for him and another set of remains was exactly the same. But because of his Native American heritage, we were able to differentiate him and return him to his family. So going back to North Korea, so 55 boxes. We're still working on that. We're working on the Korean War disinterment project, which is yielding great results. We're in phase 5 of 7 to complete phase 5 this fiscal year. I tell you that because that's the only thing happening with anything associated with North Korea. That's a travesty. Because again, for 5,300 of you, we are thwarted by geopolitics. We're thwarted by a regime that has no bearing at all as to their humanitarian responsibilities to assist in this effort. The last time we communicated with North Korea was sadly 5.5 years ago. I was encouraged to speak to you in 2019 at the Korean Cold War meeting in 2019 to tell you that one of the commitments that they signed up to was not only the repatriation of remains they're holding, but also the resumption of joint operations that we had operated with them for 10 years. 0 communications with North Korea in 5.5 years. If there were ever a definition of insularity, it would be North Korea. Now, I can tell you, and my colleagues from the State Department will be here shortly, I can tell you that this United States government, our government, has tried at every level to reach out in some way to begin at least a dialogue. And like us, they've been thwarted for years. Conversely, this is good news, is in January, we resumed operations in the People's Republic of China. Who would have thought? Not only were we able to survey 2 World War II sites with great success and enjoyed the benefits of support from the local villagers, from government officials, but more importantly, that then led to an archival exchange of documents, of research between our historians and theirs in May. Leading then to this very day, we have a 16-person team this very day in Hunan Province, People's Republic of China. They are excavating that site they surveyed in Hunan Province in January. They are excavating it today. And here's the great news. They are then moving, after they finish that, up to Liaoning Province. And if you know Chinese geography, that's the province that borders North Korea. Our team will be allowed to survey 4 Korean War aircraft crash sites. Huge. We're hopeful that, again, this effort, this exchange, this cooperation, this people-to-people strengthening of ties that we currently have with the PRC will translate in some form to North Korea. Because again, this is a humanitarian. Fundamentally, it is a human, at the very core of each of us, our humanity, is this need to connect and this need to be home. And 46 countries, to include China, view this in that same light. You all know that we have a U.S.-Russia Joint Commission on POWs, MIAs. It's been in place since 1982. It's had its ups and downs. Unfortunately, again, it's in a valley as we speak, simply because geopolitics gets in the way, complicates, and more importantly, thwarts our efforts with which to conduct this work with Russia. And Russia, just like China, is important to us simply because there are losses of Americans that we are searching for from World War II, the Cold War, Korean War, and the Vietnam War. And so for us, it's important to at least open these lines of communication. Fortunately, our chairman, you've met him before, retired Air Force General Doc Fogelsong, had continued to have dialogue with his counterpart on the Russian side. Sadly, his counterpart passed away last year, and so we're waiting for Russia to reappoint an individual that he can then at least keep the channel of communications open. We had researchers there. They're no longer there in the archives because of the global situation with Ukraine. But they're still working on research that they had compiled prior to their being taken out of the archives. So you see 3 countries you all having a stake with, because of where your loved ones were lost and the circumstances of how your loved ones were lost. They are all in various stages of cooperation and, sadly, non-cooperation. But I leave you with this, and you all explained this, you all articulated this to us beautifully this morning. What I heard was a deep-seated resoluteness. Ladies and gentlemen, let me assure you, DPAA, our partners in the service casualty offices at Armed Forces DNA Laboratory, are as resolute as you are. I also heard this morning a deep degree of hopefulness. And whether it's seeing it in your eyes, hearing it in your voice, thank you for imploring us how hopeful you are. Because just like you, and just like your level of resoluteness, we have not lost that hopefulness as well. I can't answer, nor can I speculate, where we will be with North Korea. I'd like to think, as somebody reminded me this morning, who thought the Berlin Wall would come down? And more importantly, all that transpired shortly after the wall came down. The world seems to be spiraling in many different directions, most of it unhelpful, most of it with knowing where it will lie. But throughout that, there are bright spots, there are bright lights that I think all of us in here can share in. I know this is collective grief, and I thank you for sharing your collective grief. I also know that this is generational grieving, as was pointed out, and the fact that we have young folks, that next generation here, daughters, nephews, taking up the mantle as it was described, is part of that hopefulness. Please, please, ensure that you hold us accountable. We don't need to be reminded of it, but if you feel compelled to tell us, by all means, you have that right. But I can assure you that everyone, not just the folks that work this, but as you'll hear from my colleagues this morning, from the other agencies, the other foreign partners, we're all in this together. We all share that deep conviction, that resoluteness, that hopefulness, that we will continue to strive and be able to provide you more answers. May God bless each and every one of you. May He always bless our shared mission together. And it is a shared mission. And may He always bless our great country. God bless you all. I'm very pleased to introduce to you the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for East Asia, Anka Lee. DASD, as we call him, DASD Lee, is a partner of ours. His responsibilities at the Pentagon are defense policy that ranges everywhere from Japan down to Australia, all the way through the Pacific Island nations, and more importantly, the Korean Peninsula. Well-versed senior leader. I mean, he's been a journalist. He's worked at the California State Legislature. He's worked in our Congress. And for those of you that are on WhatsApp, he's also worked at WhatsApp. Before coming to the DoD, Anka was part of a senior leadership team at the U.S. Agency for International Development here in Washington, where he was the senior advisor on China, among other things. We're very, very pleased to have you greet DASD Anka Lee. Good to see you. Thanks again for doing this.
Thank you so much. Good morning. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for that kind introduction, and thank you, Director McKee, for organizing this important event and for inviting me to be here. I'm very honored. I'm very grateful to do this. And I'm also grateful for all the family members and veterans groups that are joining us today. I'm humbled by your resilience and unrelenting support to bring our service personnel back home. And like I said, again, it is really, truly an honor to be with you. I want to begin with something, just a personal observation, something that I saw on a recent trip to Seoul that I think touches on so much of what we're trying to observe here today. If you walk into the Korean Development Agency, you're going to see a 1940s rice bag on display, and there's a logo on it that says, very simply, "From the American people." Now, perhaps there's no more powerful demonstration of gratitude for when America stood with its friend, but there's more. For Korea, once a recipient of American foreign assistance, is now a partner, a leader, working with us on many fronts. From maintaining peace and prosperity and security in the Indo-Pacific to standing shoulder to shoulder with us in support of Ukraine, this alliance is more consequential than ever for the region and for the world. I think that simple artifact that I saw on display tells a very complex story, a story of legacy, of history, of commitment to alliance, and commitment to country. And it's also a story about how past sacrifices really position us to do so much good for future generations. Past sacrifices that you all know so well, and our job is really to honor that. President Biden has said, we cannot and must not forget our obligation to our unreturned heroes, no matter how long it takes. On the Korean Peninsula, this work continues and will continue until it is done. At the Defense Department, hundreds of dedicated military and civilian folks work to fulfill this solemn obligation every day. My colleagues at the Defense POW MIA Accounting Agency, or DPAA, they are relentless and they're dedicated. And I remember sitting down with the director one of my first weeks on the job, going through what they do. It's admirable to see just how determined and dedicated they are. Their painstaking and really scientific approach to the task is essential to identifying and recovering our fallen heroes. But on the policy and alliance front, my team is also committed to work to set the political and military conditions that will allow the field work required to bring our heroes home and allow that to continue. And we also work to ensure that war never returns to the peninsula. Now, to just give you a sense of how the department's public servants reinforce each other's work, let me just very quickly begin by just highlighting the importance of the DPAA's work and how the mission actually informed what I do on the policy side. You see, DPA's personnel accounting efforts is the most fundamental demonstration of our country's commitment to the service members and the sacrifices that they made to safeguard freedom and democracy. And it is our sacred duty not only to just account for missing American personnel, but also to support those who lost their loved ones to war. We bring them home, however long it takes. And as we do that, we navigate the politics and the geopolitics. The success of many DPAA's field recoveries on the Korean Peninsula requires cooperation with an uncooperative regime, North Korea. Of the approximately 7,500 service members still unaccounted for from the Korean War, more than 5,000 are believed to be located in North Korea. The joint recovery operations that occurred between 1996 and 2005, and by the way, they were briefly resumed, as you all know, in 2018, have unfortunately been put on hold. We've been pushing hard, and we continue to tell them, the North Koreans that is, that we are open to dialogue without any precondition. Without any precondition. Unfortunately, Pyongyang has not responded. But we will keep persevering, we'll keep trying, we'll keep pushing. And that is our commitment. Now, as my office continues to strengthen our bilateral relationship with the ROK, the Republic of Korea, we are reminded every day of the Korean War's enduring influence and the cost of conflict on South Korea, too. Our alliance with the ROK is rooted in this shared sacrifice and this shared experience. As our U.S. military personnel fought alongside the international community to defend the ROK against brutal attack and unlawful invasion. The South Koreans lost hundreds of thousands of soldiers in the war. And today, the DPAA works with its ROK counterpart to help locate and identify Koreans lost in defense of liberty. So we have to honor and we have to memorialize this shared legacy as we reflect on all that we have achieved together over the last 7 decades. This includes continuing remains recovery operations, which are not without risk. My team strives to partner closely with the ROK to maintain a peaceful and stable Korean peninsula, and by doing that, create a safe environment for DPAA's work. This powerful history, this legacy, one that emerged truly from shared sacrifice, has also empowered us to look to the future. Our service members' sacrifice, their duty to the country, made that possible. The ironclad U.S. ROK relationship is one of our most consequential alliances in the whole world. And our relationship with the ROK matures, so does our ability to do more with them, to promote common values and pursue our shared security interests. The United States and Korea are in lockstep in deterring aggressive actors, strengthening our alliance capabilities, and contributing to the security of the broader region. Together, we're shaping activities with like-minded partners, with friends and allies in the region and around the world, while also finding new, imaginative ways to strengthen cooperation between our two countries. We are focused on improving our alliance communication, ensuring our combined readiness, improving coordination with the United Nations Command, and building a strong foundation of collaboration on science and technology. And just on Monday, we will kick off the annual Old Chief Freedom Shield exercise with the South Koreans. This exercise showcases the strength of the U.S. ROK combined defense posture, our interoperability, and the sophistication of our joint capabilities. What it does is it sends a very powerful to the region that we stand ready to maintain peace and security together. And this comes on the heels of the historic trilateral U.S. ROK Japan Commitment Summit in Tokyo, the first of its kind in either the ROK or Japan. And most critically, either directly or indirectly, what we're doing on all these fronts bolster DPAA's mission. And we'll continue to stand shoulder to shoulder as we have done in the decades to come to do all this work to make sure this continues. So history, legacy, commitment to alliance, and commitment to country. You see, for us to shape the future, we have to understand our past. We have to understand what the sacrifices we made. And in doing so, we strive to bring back our fallen, without whom the history of Korea and America would not be complete. Their sacrifice and your commitment and resilience remind us of our shared past and future. They remind us why we must do all that we can to ensure that war does not return to the peninsula. And they remind us that no other family should have to endure what you all have experienced. So I'm just grateful to be here today, and thank you for being here today. We are committed to remembering our service personnel who fought for freedom and to returning them to their families and loved ones. And as we work toward an enduring peace on the Korean Peninsula, we work to find answers that will bring peace to you, the families and friends of our service members who have yet to come home. In the words of Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin, we stand with you and we always will. So thank you very much.
One sec. One sec. Anka, thank you very much for, more importantly, coming and sharing your perspectives, strategic perspectives with the families. You know, as I mentioned, we in DPA could not do this alone. You know, our partners at the Department of Defense Policy Office are steadfast in their commitment and, more importantly, their sharing of what it is we do and advancing that cause. On behalf of the families, this is a copy of this year's POW MIA Recognition Day poster with our gratitude, again, for the partnership. Next, we have the privilege of having the Honorable Julie Turner here. And as you see on the slide, her title is the Special Envoy to Secretary Blinken for North Korean human rights issues. As you can imagine, that list is long. But we're fortunate that within her list of issues on human rights in North Korea is this sacred mission. Ambassador Turner is a very seasoned diplomat, very seasoned government senior leader, started out as a presidential management fellow, and has dedicated her life, her career, to working for our government in advancing human rights and democracy all over the world. She is a resident expert when it comes to democracy and human rights. And no more is it sorely needed than in North Korea. So we're very pleased to have Ambassador Turner with us to share, again, the Department of State's commitment to this mission and, more importantly, to you.
To be here with you all today and with those of you who are joining us online. I'd first like to start by commending Director McKeag and the DPAA team for the work that they do to search for, find, and account for those missing from the Korean War and Cold War. Your mission is at the core of American values to ensure we appropriately honor those who have made the ultimate sacrifice in defense of our freedom and to hold true to our commitment to leave no one behind. I also commend DPAA for holding this government briefing for families. It's an affirmation of our democratic values, including responsive governance and transparency, but even more importantly, it's an affirmation that your loved ones are not forgotten. As Director McKeag said or referenced earlier, please continue to hold us accountable as the government. It's our job to serve you, the American people, and we want to be responsive to your needs, including through bringing your loved ones home. I'm also, as Director McKeag said, very pleased to see the intergenerational representation around the room. It's really important to continue to share the stories of your families, of American history, and the sacrifices that your loved ones have made for our country, so that this legacy carries forward so that war never happens again on the peninsula. Today marks the day the Republic of Korea was established in 1948, making today a powerful day to remember the sacrifices of the U.S. service members who fought in defense of the ROK. I just returned actually this morning in the wee hours of the night from a visit to South Korea. The ROK is a bustling, flourishing democracy, rising in its global profile and leveraging the soft power that comes from K-pop and K-culture. Meanwhile, the news from the north is far more dire, and the situation that many believed could not get worse appears to be worsening. Since COVID, the government has put in place new laws, tightening restrictions on its population, instituting severe punishments for those seeking to leave the country in search of opportunity, and increasing the number of public executions. We thought that the North Koreans even had a little bit of moral bar here, but even in the past year, they've started executing children in these executions. So while South Korea's global power is on the rise, the North continues to fail to provide for the basic needs of its people. Your family members' sacrifices have had a lasting impact in laying the foundation for the freedom and prosperity that South Korea enjoys. Today, our alliance with South Korea remains ironclad, and together, trilaterally with Japan, we remain committed to reestablishing dialogue with the DPRK without preconditions. As we noted nearly a year ago in the spirit of Camp David Agreement, the U.S., the ROK, and Japan commit to strengthening cooperation to promote respect for human rights in the DPRK and reaffirm a shared commitment to the immediate resolution of abductees, detainees, and unrepatriated prisoners of war. It has become increasingly clear that the DPRK human rights record is inextricably linked to international peace and security. The DPRK government continues to prioritize weapons over the welfare of its own people. In June, along with the ROK, Japan, and other members of the United Nations Security Council, the U.S. voted to hold an open briefing on North Korean human rights at the Council. In that briefing, numerous governments and the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights underscored the linkage, saying it's not possible to divorce the state of human rights in the DPRK from considerations of peace and security on the Korean Peninsula. Many governments similarly highlighted the impact of the regime's policies on families and the decades-long separations that so many have had to endure. The international community is commemorating the 10-year anniversary of the 2014 landmark UN Commission of Inquiry report this year. Escaped South Korean POWs provided testimony and spoke during the Commission's public hearings in Seoul in 2013. Other groups continue to document, even today, and report on conditions for POWs as part of the international accountability and truth and reconciliation process. The Commission's report, when it was issued a decade ago, found that crimes against humanity had and continue to occur in the DPRK and condemned the international community's response as insufficient. Here, 10 years later, we continue to face enormous challenges, including shifting regional dynamics and increased isolationism by the North Koreans. But the human rights and humanitarian crisis persists. We have been leading the way and calling for the increased international action that we've seen this year and continued to prioritize human security in North Korea. We continue to use the full range of tools to urge the DPRK back to the negotiating table. And in doing so, we are urging the DPRK to consider the humanitarian aspects of remains recovery work. We are also trying to raise international awareness of the global impact of the DPRK's repressive policies that leave family members around the world with unanswered questions and impacts people of all nationalities. We continue to underscore the humanitarian nature of POW MIA accounting, along with reunifications for other separated families. Over the course of my tenure, I've had the opportunity to meet with family members of abductees in Japan and in the ROK, wartime abductee families, wartime separated families, South Korean unrepatriated POW families, South Korean POW escapees, ROK detainee families, and American POW and MIA family members as well. It's been heartbreaking to hear your stories, and the grief of decades-long separation and searching is unimaginable for many of us. But we want you to know that we remain committed to this mission. In addition, for many aging family members, we know that time is running out to receive answers and to find closure. Thank you for all the tremendous sacrifices you have made. We feel the urgency, and we are committed to getting back to the negotiating table. As I said, we're committed to seeing this mission brought to conclusion. Thank you all.
Madam Ambassador, it is a distinct privilege for us to have you here. I first had the privilege of meeting Ambassador Turner at a armistice celebration between the United States and the Republic of Korea. We sat next to each other, and I was struck then by the fact that her heart and soul are in this tough job of seeking again to advance human rights and democracy in North Korea. And as I mentioned earlier, we're thankful that you include this sacred mission as part of your portfolio. On behalf of the families, just a copy of this year's POW MIA poster with our gratitude again for all you do. Next up is another State Department professional, Seth Bailey. Seth is currently the Deputy Special Representative for the DPRK, again, working directly for Secretary Blinken. And in this role, as you can imagine, much like Ambassador Turner, he's fighting the good fight, but clearly an uphill battle. Seth was formerly a visiting professor at the Asia Pacific Center for Security Studies out in Honolulu. Foreign Service Officer, has served time at the embassy in Beijing, at embassies in Sri Lanka, Afghanistan, South Korea. So again, you have someone well-versed in geopolitical affairs in the Indo-Pacific region, but primarily on the Korean Peninsula. We actually had the good fortune of him having to be in Honolulu 2 weeks ago, that he took the time out of his busy schedule to come visit the laboratory and, more importantly, interact with our team with all things that might happen, that could happen, when it comes to resuming operations with North Korea.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. It really is an honor and a pleasure to be here with you today. I'm especially grateful to Director McKeag, retired General McKeag, for his generosity, for his introduction, and also for the time that he took out of his busy schedule when I was in Honolulu to walk me through the amazing and impressive work that DPAA does out there. But let me begin first by recognizing and commending you, the families and the loved ones of our brave service members who made the ultimate sacrifice. In service of our great country, your sustained commitment and dedication to honoring their sacrifice, to banding together and advocating for your loved ones and to keep their memory alive is an incredible service to our nation. I also want to thank my friend and colleague, Anka Lee, who I've known for many years. We could not have a more dedicated person leading us at the Department of Defense as our Deputy Assistant Secretary for Defense, covering East Asia. And of course, my colleague, Ambassador Julie Turner, who really personifies our commitment to human rights and our focus on trying to bring human rights commitments to the fore when it comes to dealing with North Korea. She did mention that she flew in this morning. I think that she's probably a little too modest to admit that she did that specifically so that she could be here. She flew all night to be here with us. So very grateful for the opportunity to work with her. I am the director of the State Department's Office of Korean and Mongolian Affairs, and I wear a second hat, as Major General McKeag said, as the Deputy Special Representative for the DPRK, which means that were we to engage in discussions, negotiations, a dialogue with North Korea, I would be one of the lead negotiators talking to them. So I feel a great deal of personal and professional responsibility to all of you as I look out over this vast audience and see your faces and see the level of commitment and sustained desire from you. I also feel a personal commitment to this mission because, like you, I have a family member who died in Korea and has not yet returned. So in preparation for this speech, I reached out to the last living member of my father's generation, my uncle Lyndall, who's 94. His memory's not quite what it used to be, but together we were able to piece together what we know about his cousin, the person that I grew up hearing about and learning about, named Butch Hardesty. And Butch died sometime between Thanksgiving and December the 10th of 1950 along the Choshin Reservoir, along with approximately 18,000 other U.S. service members, as many as 10,000 who died as a result of battle when Chinese troops streamed across the Yalu, and perhaps another 7,500, 8,000 who may have died from the extreme conditions and the weather that existed at that time. And so it is both professionally and personally motivating to me to focus on this mission, and I am grateful for the opportunity to be in this place at this time. However, as Director McKeag has accurately pointed out, things are currently at a stalemate. They are stalled. We have not had direct engagements with North Korea about this issue or any other for many years, and we have reached out many times, both publicly and privately at multiple levels, in an attempt to convince North Korean leadership to begin again to engage in this important work. They have ignored those requests repeatedly, and we will continue to press them. But at the same time, we must do everything that we can within our power to make sure that we, the United States, our people, and the people and countries of our partners and allies remain safe from North Korea's growing provocations and their increasingly dangerous weapons programs. North Korea has fired off more than 100 ballistic missiles since 2022. It is the only country in the world that test fires these missiles without any warning to its neighbors. Perhaps more concerning, we see and hear rhymes of the past in North Korea's most recent actions as they create a military alliance with Russia and have provided Russia with thousands of containers of munitions, dozens of ballistic missiles, all of which are being used on the battlefield in Vladimir Putin's brutal and illegal war against Ukraine. So North Korea's behaviors and their provocations, their weapons proliferation, their destabilizing acts are no longer focused on Northeast Asia, but instead are again spilling over into a regional and global set of conflicts, having a direct and material impact on the safety and security in Europe. And we find North Korean weapons are finding their way into other conflict zones around the world. And that is, of course, of great and deep concern to us from a policy perspective, and also concerning to us from a national security perspective. And so we have worked to solidify our relationship and our alliances in an effort to try and deter and contain North Korea's bad behaviors. Some of you may be aware that earlier this month, President Biden hosted all of the leaders of NATO countries here in Washington to celebrate the 75th anniversary of the founding of the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. At that time, we did something somewhat unusual, which we haven't done before, and that is we invited the leaders of the Republic of Korea, Japan, Australia, and New Zealand, what we sometimes refer to as the Indo-Pacific Four, to also come and be a part of that celebration and to be a part of the way in which we focused our attention on our shared attempt to deter aggression and to keep ourselves and the world safe. And so President Yoon came here and had a series of important meetings, including with President Biden, and we were able to demonstrate that we are united together with the Indo-Pacific, our European allies, and globally in our attempts to push back on North Korea's aggressive behavior, on their alliance with Russia, on China's unwillingness to call out and place greater restraints on North Korea or Russia. And we will continue to work on these efforts. But as my colleague Ambassador Turner has said, and as Anka Lee and Director McKeag have said, we have made it very clear that we are willing to engage with North Korea without preconditions. We do not have to begin discussions with their nuclear program. Instead, we have made it very clear that we would like to begin discussions by talking about the confidence-building measures associated with bringing your loved ones back to the United States. And so the DPAA is at the center of the way in which we hope to restart our discussions with North Korea in a way that might, over the course of the long run, lead to a more stable and less chaotic Korean peninsula. It really was inspiring to go to Honolulu 2 weeks ago to see the forensic laboratory that my colleague, Dr. John Bird, who I've known for many years, runs, and to walk me through the way in which they take care of the family members, of your family members who have been returned. Along with Dr. Bird, I was accompanied by Deputy Director John Figueres, Fig, and he took more than 2 hours out of his day to take us to each of the stations within this forensic laboratory. And there they can show you the boxes that have been returned with remains in them. Sometimes the North Korean government has mislabeled these. Instead of having one person's remains in there, they may at times have 4, 5, or 6 people's remains, and yet through painstaking effort, our colleagues at DPAA are able to test these bones, to put them together, and you can see the way in which they've done this with the utmost care and dignity. It really is truly inspiring, and it is very motivating. Sometimes when things get very dark, North Korea shoots off another missile, the sirens go off and people are calling in the middle of the night, asking what our response is going to be. It can be easy to focus on the negative. It can be easy to focus on the conflict and the way in which this problem is not resolved after 70 years. And yet, by going out to DPAA, I gained a new perspective on the kind of enduring focus and goals that we have together as a government and as a people, as a nation, to resolve this matter once and for all, and to honor all of you and all of your loved ones who have made such a terrible and inspiring sacrifice. So I want to close with a renewed commitment to you, to your family members, that we will not give up on this effort, that it is a integral part of what we care about and what we focus on when we spend our time at the State Department trying to figure out how to move ourselves and North Korea in the direction of peace. We will continue to do that. I pray that you will find the peace that you need and that you deserve, and that God will bless you and continue to bless this great country of ours. Thank you.
When Seth came out to visit our laboratory 2 weeks ago, he had shared with us that he is one of you. And I wanted him to tell you that, to show you that him in his important position truly understands where you come from, and more importantly, where you are. So on behalf of your fellow family members, our compliments, and more importantly, our thanks for sharing your insights, and more importantly, your steadfast commitment to get it done.
My pleasure.
Thanks. So this morning, technology has not been my friend. 3 times over, 3 times up at the plate, 3 times I failed. So this is lunchtime. I'm going to turn it over to Mike Fowler, but more importantly, I'm going to crawl into a hole and figure out how I get right on technology.
All right, folks, this is a good time. So it's now lunch break. We will gather back in here at 1 p.m. If you recall, I said the QR codes for your lunch options in the close-in area here. So we will see you all back here at 1 o'clock to begin the afternoon's briefings. Thank you.